All right, let's call this May meeting of the Lawrenceburg Advisory Planning Commission to order. Roll call, please.
Jim Crook.
Here.
Derry Hutcherson.
Here.
Owen Cross.
Here.
Tim Denning.
Here.
Thomas Roulette.
Present.
Lenny Fryman.
Here.
Tony Abbott.
Here.
Attorney Del Weldon.
Here.
And myself.
Have we all had a chance to review the minutes of the last meeting? If so, do we have a motion to approve it and or a second?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion accepted. Do we have a staff report tonight?
Just a verbal for you this evening. Each of these applications has gone a internal site plan review. The developers have been receptive to our changes. I'd recommend these be passed as presented.
Okay. So, new business, do we have a representative for Florence Drive Estates in attendance?
Yes.
Step up to the podium, please.
Eric Lang with Land Consultants. Before you, you have a zone change application for the property located on the westerly side of Sycamore Estates Drive, which is just up past Walmart. That is currently zoned as business and general manufacturing. At the moment, if you've not been back that way, if you would drive back Sycamore Estates Drive, there's a fairly large skinny parcel there. Topography-wise, there is a fairly narrow strip of land that's actually developable. Once you get beyond about 150 feet from the road, things drop off to that creek pretty steeply. So everything on that west side of Sycamore Estates Drive is not likely to ever be developed business, general manufacturing, because topography squeezes you into a kind of a long, narrow space that's not developable of any size. So what we are proposing or requesting is to rezone that to residential. That residential zone, the nearest residential zone at the moment is at the end of Sycamore Estates Drive. There are some apartments back there, if you're familiar with that. This would essentially attach to that. You are right on the westerly edge of the city of Lawrenceburg. Dearborn County takes up to the west. Aurora kind of takes up to the south. That is all agricultural land, but if this were to be developed as residential, again, that topography would kind of create a natural buffer. It would be cost prohibitive to develop much of anything beyond a couple hundred feet off the road at the most. So R1 is what we are currently requesting. Everything on the other side of Sycamore Estates Drive is currently business, general manufacturing. That's plenty big enough that if that's what that needs to be developed as, that's doable. It's just the west side is not. Ultimately, if this goes through, the plan is to look at some sort of more affordable housing, smaller patio style homes, something that is in the affordable realm, although affordable is not what it used to be, but trying to do something that's more reasonably priced, smaller lots, attached single family, something like that. But obviously nobody's going to jump and look into that a whole lot further from an engineering standpoint unless the zoning is going to allow them to do it. So this does actually fit your master plan. If you want to look at that, that area is planned in your vision statement as far as a zoning code to have that be a residential area. So.
Do we have any questions from the board?
I have several, and you're the only representation here tonight for them.
Correct. I'm the civil engineer that and surveyor that would be working on the project.
Utilities. Does Lawrenceburg have utilities there?
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay.
Water and sewer are present, and I actually helped Eric Webster do a quote for running electric to the site already.
So water and sewer is present already. The only thing you'd have to do is get electric.
Yes.
Okay. Roughly how many units? You got any idea?
I mean, I think when we just pencil sketched something out, it was 50 or 60 units at a minimum. But I mean, it could be more, it just depends on what we're looking at. But we're looking at kind of a minimal square footage to try to stay affordable and make it relatively dense. I know you guys are in the process of switching some things up with your zoning as far as you're gonna have more residential zones, some more dense than others. If this goes through, depending on how the land lays and works out, we would probably eventually seek a more dense zone than just an R1, but this is kind of the first step.
The only other question I'd have, and really somewhat of a concern, is the traffic. If you go putting 50 more units in there, that's 2 cars per unit normally. That's a very narrow road through there. Is there any provisions to widen that? Does anyone know? The roadway in there? I mean, if you all been, now just to back up, if you all been at Walmart at the wrong time of the day, you know how traffic backs up that hill. And now we're going to possibly put more units there. Just looking at the traffic part of it.
That road was built to city spec at the time.
Right, but we're adding more. And I was just wondering
Yeah.
if there's, does a traffic study need to be done, or we just turn it loose and hope for the best?
It'd be the same as like your road you live on.
Okay.
Any other questions from?
Where would they be parking? I mean, on the street?
No, there would be provisions, there would either be, generally what we had looked at is you would have 1 parking spot per unit, and then every once in a while you'd have a little green space area with maybe 7 or 8 car parking lot there for additional cars. But like a garage with enough to park a car outside of it. So really 2 parking spaces, but
You're kind
we'll
of in that area, I know where you're talking about.
yeah, but no, parking on the street would not be, that's not an option.
I have one question, or maybe a couple questions. Sycamore Estates Drive, there's no street lights on that street. Whose responsibility for those, to put the street lights in? Because this whole complex has been screaming for years to get street lights on this road, and now we're gonna add to it, and we still don't have no street lights.
That would be our responsibility, City of Lawrenceburg. We just took.
When we accepted the road?
We accepted it as a street, we took that upon ourselves, so if any street lights need to be put in now, I would almost think it would be the City
So
of Lawrenceburg.
it is possible to put street lights on that road?
Not aware of if it is or isn't.
I mean, if we're developing that one side, I would think we could certainly work around that. And then if electric is something that's got to be extended up there anyway, then we can work through making sure that the electric is extended such that that works to add those lights. I don't think that would be a big thing to overcome.
Well, I think they definitely need lights on that street. These people have been screaming for it for years now, and now, like I said, we're gonna add a whole bunch of other apartments up there.
Sure.
We as council should have thought about that before we accepted as that street. That was our fault for not doing so.
I was told at one time that we could not put street lights on there because all of that was private property.
Here we are debating it, and it could have possibly been something that we
Yep.
could have asked that
Well, that's,
owner of the road they had to get that street up to standards, I guess is what you say, with the
That's how,
sidewalk.
sidewalk came into play, yes.
Yeah, and that probably wouldn't, before we accepted it, we should have probably said, hey, by the way.
Well, I don't believe streetlights were required for an industrial subdivision, which it was at the time.
Okay, so there's the answer.
so now we're changing it around though. And I think the reason we accepted it was so we could do the snow cleaning off of it. That was
I'm
the
sure
biggest
probably
reason,
was.
was the safety of it. All right. Well, then that's something city council needs to look into, getting lights on that road. If we're
Well,
gonna add
they
to
go
it.
developing it as well, like he stated, there'll probably be some lights in there, I'm sure there'll be side streets or something in there.
That's-
Well, I don't know that there would be any side street. The most you would have off of that would be a short little stub to a small parking lot, because the depth of what's developable, you're not going to get,
run lengthwise, so to speak,
so you,
not going depth.
correct. As you go down that street, it'll just be stacked up
I'm following you.
against the frontage.
I was thinking maybe back here in that back corner you could build, but
There's a small spot that it looks like you might be able to get behind it. It's just going to be a matter of, that'll be a fight to get some houses in there, and is it worth fighting that for 5 more houses is what I think is going to end up.
Are the garages gonna be facing the front?
That's, yes,
You're gonna have outside light on each unit?
we've not that far yet. I mean,
That would be,
things are certainly
that
possible,
would be one way to solve that problem.
sure.
John, do you know if the streetlights will be required if it gets rezoned?
I'd have to review our code on that note.
And do you, I just heard Mr. Abbott say before the meeting that, did you say, or is it your opinion that we can put streetlights on Sycamore Stage Drive as is without touching the private property at all, just within the?
We do have right-of-way there enough to put the electric
Is that big
and the
enough for
streetlights
sure?
in. Do what?
Is that big enough for sure?
That is big
Right
enough for
away?
sure, yeah. There's plenty right, I think it's 60-foot right-of-way through there.
Okay.
But the issue is we don't have electric service to that road.
So we would need to make an arrangement with the owner of the private property that runs along.
That's a discussion for another time about
Well, I just
electric
wanted
figured
to
out.
any confusion.
Right.
because That came up when we talked about the lights the last time, is that we could put lights in, we do them right away, but to run electric, we'd have to, the owner of the private adjacent property would have to give us permission to do that.
Is the owner of that property the same owner that's wanting to put in this build here? Is that the same owner?
Florence Drive LLC, Florence Drive Estates LLC is the group that owns it, so there's a handful of people involved in that.
But are they?
Yeah,
the
it's-
same ones?
y-
They're-
yeah.
It's the same group. So-
Yeah, it's, I believe they own multiple, both sides of the road back there, yes.
So I would think that they would work with us to run electric through their property so we can put streets on, which is serving where
Oh,
they
yeah.
build.
No, there'd be no reason they wouldn't want to play ball with that. They're going to need electric for their own development anyway, so, yeah, it's just all, trying to do it all at the same time so everybody's coordinated and where street lights are and where driveways are works is, yeah, no, absolutely.
I just didn't want there to be any confusion, because the last time we talked about streetlights, we were talking about this road that's buttressed by the Linkmeyer group. Linkmeyer owns the property running
Right.
all the way back to Waterview, but that was before Linkmeyer was gonna develop anything on it. We were just talking about the lights that would serve the Waterview residents. Linkmeyer doesn't own the Waterview.
No.
That's a whole different group. So to get lights that would serve the Waterview people, we would have to work with the Linkmeyer group, which I'm sure they would, but we couldn't just put stick lights in there without getting permission from the private property owner. So I mean, that's still true. This is different now because now it's gonna be more residential units and still serving the Waterview. But I just didn't want anyone to be confused about whether or not we can put lights up and how that would work. I mean, anything's always possible.
Any other questions or comments? Anybody out there have any questions? Do we have a motion to approve or deny this zone change application and forward it to council?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Eric.
We have a representative from Greenberg Faro in attendance.
I have got Greenberg Faro on my computer here. Let me see if I can get them up on the screen somehow. Trying to turn you guys' volume up here. Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, let me see here. And what I'll do is I'll pull your application up on the screen, unless you've got a presentation for me.
No, go right ahead.
Okay, yep, I've got your application on my screen, showing to my board. Can you guys hear them
Okay.
at all?
Yes.
Okay.
Vaguely.
Okay. I can't see what you're showing,
No,
but that's...
it's just the basic site plan of the
Okay.
Lighthouse Drive property there.
Okay. Well, is there anything that you would like to know about our business?
Could you give us a little overview of what we're doing?
Sure.
And give me your name if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm Robin Peck. I am a pre-construction project manager with Valvoline, working with Ryan Scott at Greenberg Faro, who is the architect and engineer of record. And they've developed a set of documents for us that I'm sure you have up there on your screen. For those of you who might not be familiar with Valvoline, we are instant oil change. We promote preventative maintenance with our oil and fluid changes. We typically do business Monday through Saturday, limited hours on Sunday. We pride ourselves in our drive-through service that needs no appointments. No drop-offs are accepted. About 10 to 15-minute oil change. All of our services are performed inside the building. We're a low traffic generator for the area around us. We have no overnight parking on site, no outdoor storage. Back to our parking is for our employees only because our customers don't get out of their car. We have a limited delivery schedule, which does not include semis. We have a delivery schedule with, maybe a bulk truck a couple times a week. Our typical recycling and refuse pickup. So what you have in front of you is the site plan that was developed for this property there in Lawrenceburg. And I'll turn it back over to you.
Any questions from the board?
I got a question on storm drainage, if she can hear me.
Yeah, they can hear you.
Okay, when you're looking at C 4.2, which is the utilities in that, you have a storm drain grate. I want to call it at the southwest corner facing US 50. But further up into the parking lot, you have the retention area. Does that storm drain tie into that, or does that go to US 50?
That will tie back into the detention facility.
Okay, and then that in turn will come out of there and then go to where the riprap is on, what, G29, I believe?
Yes,
Yep.
and that would be going back to DOT roadway.
Okay. One other question would be oil containment. Do you guys have like storage tanks on site for the oil itself?
They have oil tanks located within the basement. A very unique characteristics of the Valvoline building is they have an impervious liner associated with the basement, so it's as tight as a bathtub. So if there ever is a spill, it's actually contained within the basement if the actual containment system within the basement is punctured.
Okay. And one last question is fire suppression. What kind of fire suppression do you have?
This building, when conversing with the architect, does not have a sprinkler system based on the ISC code being utilized for this facility. Sorry, go ahead, Robin.
Oh, I'm going to say, I don't think IDHS requires us to have a sprinkler system in this size building. That's a 2-bay.
Correct.
Yeah.
I just didn't know because there was oil, possibility of a fire, something of that nature. Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I got a question. I'm having a heck of a time figuring out exactly where this is located. Is it near
It's just to the west of Arby's on Lighthouse Drive.
Arby's?
Yes, right by the cul-de-sac there.
West
Yeah.
side of Arby's.
If you look at the lower right of my screen,
It's called Lighthouse Drive. Here's 50, here's Lighthouse Drive. So if you're coming into Arby's, that's the road. And then this takes you all around and goes over to Poppy's and stuff.
So it will not have an entrance
Off of
off
US
of
50.
50?
no.
No, they're coming in off of Lighthouse.
Okay, I got it.
They got a US 50 address, which is weird, but
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Questions from the audience?
You got some good looking trees, Tommy.
Yes, I see that.
I'm sure Mr. Johnson will stay up on that to make sure that's done properly.
That's right.
One tree per 4 parking spaces.
Do we have a motion to approve or deny the site plan?
I'll make the motion to approve.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, guys. I will be in touch with the next steps in this process.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Do we have a representative here for Kimberly Horn in attendance?
Good evening. My name is Mike Timko. I'm a civil engineer on the project. I also have Victor McKell here with me, with the developer for the project as well. We're here on behalf of Wawa. We're looking at the property along Eads Parkway, just south of the Wendy's, or also the way we've been looking at it, just west of the wastewater treatment plant. So right in that vacant lot right there. So a little bit about the site plan that's on the screen here. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Wawa, it's a convenience store that also sells fuel, and I say it that way intentionally because they have been a convenience store for centuries. They started out on the East Coast, and then in 1996, at the request of their customers, is when they actually started selling fuel out of convenience. So really their roots are in the food industry, in the convenience store industry. And for those of you that have visited Wawa's on the East Coast or down south, you've probably noticed that it is different than your typical fuel station convenience store. A lot of fresh produce, fresh sandwiches made to order. So they really pride themselves on that, and a good number of their customers come to the store alone, even without getting fuel, which is why you'll see more parking spaces than you typically would for a traditional gas station. So you can see here we've got about just under a 6,000 square foot building, and then 10 fuel pumps out front in a 5x2 orientation. Access to the site is primarily going to be from the existing signal that's there today, so adding the fourth leg to come in. That's been designed in such a way that it could also be a shared drive in the future for other development to the west or south. And then there is also a right-in, right-out along Eads Parkway as well in the northeast corner there. The only other thing I wanted to mention, just utility drainage standpoint, we are proposing a drainage detention basin on the east side of the site there that will tie into the existing storm sewer that runs along the east property line today. And then we are going to have to do a sanitary sewer main extension despite our proximity to the wastewater treatment plant. So that'll come from the property to the west. We'll be extending that over to our property to make the connection there. And then there's existing water on the south side of East Parkway that we'll be tying into as well. So otherwise, happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Okay, going back to the sewer.
Yes.
So you're going to the wastewater plant, or are you tying into the main out front?
So my understanding is that we will need to extend a gravity sewer main from our property to the west of us, where the tire shop is.
Okay.
That's our nearest gravity connection. Exactly.
Otherwise you'd have to have a
Yep.
grinder pump.
Yep. So we are going to have to extend a gravity main east to our side.
We'll go under 50 and go over.
That's right.
County Road.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
That was one of my questions. I'm like, because you can't tie in one on 50.
That's right.
That's a force main.
Yep.
Okay. Have you worked with the city and all the utilities on the water aspect of it? And what I mean by that, you know, Wawa's going in there, something else is going to go in there. So eventually, other people are going to be needing to tie into that water main. So we don't need multiple taps on a water main. So is there provisions where Wawa brings in a certain diameter pipe off the main and we use it as a manifold and they tap into it? Or?
Yeah, and I think, and I know the overall land seller owner is here as well tonight. And I think that's something we could certainly look into. As of right now, we show an individual domestic tap for just the Wawa because there's a decent amount of uncertainty of what would go on around us. But we are, even as of this week, having that conversation of if it's not only more economical, but to your point, just a better practice to have a shared main that would more or less just follow the shared access road for future convenience, fire protection, everything.
Okay, so I'm sure the fire chief probably wants a hydrant in there anyway. Probably.
Correct. Yep. Yep. He wants to make sure that at a minimum, you know, our site is covered within 300 feet of hydrant.
It was an inch and a half pipe you guys.
Right. So I'm trying to remember. I think if I remember right, there's an existing hydrant along Eads Parkway that happens to just be at the northeast corner already, so we would be covered. But yes, we've been working with fire chief.
And how did you get away from not having to put a turn lane or a decent?
Well, we did our traffic study with NDOT months ago, really. And they felt that just based on the numbers, and I think having the right in, right out actually helped, because then you're splitting the traffic a little bit more. But basically, the numbers were able to show that with it being at an existing signal, having 2 lanes and a designated left, if you're coming eastbound, that was enough that if folks are turning in right into the site,
So you
that
come
it was
in this way, go out
Cor-
this way, people coming westbound, you come in this way.
right.
But you can also come in here as well,
Yeah, in that,
eastbound.
correct. So it's right in, right out. Yep. And really the advantage there is probably more so the right out, just so people can get around the signal a little bit easier.
Yeah, I was really surprised there wasn't a decel on the
Mm-hmm.
there.
Any other questions from board or comments?
John, can you weigh in on what part of your process confirmed the rating for that intersection with NDOT?
I required them to submit that study to me to prove they didn't need that.
Here are some pictures that match.
So that's part of John's process too.
Yeah,
Okay.
one of our required documents.
Any other questions or comments from the board or from the audience out there? Do we have a motion to approve or deny this site plan?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any old business?
I have none.
I'd like to bring something up under old business. In a past meeting, we passed that UDO and sent it to council. I don't think anybody was prepared for that UDO to pass it or not pass it. We weren't taught anything about it. I would like to rescind that motion and have them come in and us have meetings and go through this UDO and then decide to send it to council or not send it to council. Because I know I didn't read that UDO. I don't think anybody else here read that. It's 260 pages. And we just did something that we weren't properly trained to do, I don't think, at the time. So I think we really need to go through it because it's causing a lot of stir in the public. And that way we can say we did our due diligence. We're trying to do it the right way. And I'd like to rescind that motion and set up meetings for us to go through this with the writers of it.
If I may add to that, because I was part of that motion the last time. And after the negatives that we hear out there in Facebook land, which one of them's been in place since 1998, if people would do their due diligence, they would see that. But when I got to looking into it more, I sat back and I thought, you know what? This is not my job. I don't do this every day. I would entrust someone that does that every day to bring said changes to me, and say, hey, we need to change this, we need to change that. I can sit there, and as you stated, I have tried reading it, but I could read that all day long, and some of that stuff is just not going to make sense to me because I do not do that day in and day out. And there has been some pushback on it, with people saying, oh, now the city's coming into their homes. No, they're not coming into their homes. It's just crazy. But, I hear it just as well as you do, Mr. Abbott. And I have concerns myself, but I reiterate, I think in my honest opinion is for those people that do it day in and day out, say, hey, this is what we have. This is the changes in this of what we have. We would like for you guys to pass them and go from there. That's just my thoughts.
So you're saying you would pass that UDO as written?
I'm saying if I was assured by the people that have to deal with that on a day-to-day basis, that they're comfortable with it. They know more about it than I do. I just said, I could read that all day long. Some of that stuff's not gonna make sense to me. Some does, some doesn't.
Well, that's the whole point of being educated by them. That's why
That's
we
what
go
I'm
through
trying
it.
to say, Mr. Abbott. They come to us as a plan commission and as a common council say, these are the changes we really want in, what is it, from 151 to 158?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because they're in there, but I can't compare apples to apples no more. I've already asked that question in the last plan commission meeting we had. It'd been nice if it'd been where they marked out what was taken out and put up in red what was added. That wasn't done. So I can't sit there and take 288 pages and look through and try to compare it to what we have now. I tried it. I mean, it's just confusing. And again, there's people in place that do it day in and day out. I feel they should say, this is what we recommend. Maybe they don't like everything that's in there, but it's our job as planning, zoning, and common council to pass it. You know what I mean? But, you know, if they have some things that they don't like in there, maybe they can tell us. I don't know. I mean, I'm sorry about the Facebook stuff, but that's just the way society.
It's not just Facebook. I've got, you know, real live people coming up and complaining quite a bit about it, so.
Yeah, but what were they complaining about? Tell me what they were complaining about.
Entering into people's homes, it was just,
It's not true.
but
It's been in place since 1998.
let me say, okay, it's not true.
1998.
Not true. Did you enter a home over on Charlotta Street without the permission of the owner?
Did I?
Did the city of Lawrenceburg?
No, of course.
Oh, yes, we did.
Tony, I think one of your jobs as a council person is to stop those rumors when you hear them.
That's not a rumor. That is not a rumor. Our enforcement officer went into that woman's home on Charlotta Street.
I'm talking about the rumor that the new code allows us to just go in people's houses whenever we want on Facebook.
Well, the code does, the code does allow us to. We did it. We did it, Dale. We did it to the,
If our code enforcement.
we did it to the old post office.
We had a warrant from the judge to go in there.
Okay, but that, warrant or not a warrant, that's still, we did it.
You know better, Tony, come on.
That's not knowing better. I know we did that.
You know that we're not gonna pass a law that says we can just go in anyone's house whenever we want, or we can tell people to paint their house a different color. You know better than that.
That's in there.
It's not.
It's the size of the vinyl siding that somebody can put up is in
Not
there.
at all. It's the thing that's in the code that talks about painting is if someone builds a brand new, large subdivision, says they can't paint every house the same color, unless they ask to, and then we can let them. It doesn't apply to any existing home.
Then we can let them. See, that's
That's
not right.
But that's for only new subdivisions. So when someone comes up and says, Councilman Admin, I'm really worried about this new law says that the city can just come in my house whenever they want, you should say, no, sir, that's not true. Of course we would never do that. And if someone says, Lenny, I'm worried about this new law, it says they can just come make me paint my house a different color, you gotta say, no, sir, that's not true. We would never do something.
Well, now, I say part of this, Dale, is, I think the wording was bad on some of
But
this.
it's not, it's very clear.
Well, I mean, because
It's not
I've
bad.
got
The
people in
wording's
my
not
area
bad at all.
complaining too.
But
I understand.
the wording's not bad, it's very clear.
But now what is it the renters that you're allowed to go in on every 2 years that you're supposed to go check this stuff?
No, there is an existing, right now we have a law that says that there has to be a health and safety inspection done on any rental unit in the city at least every 2 years. That's already the law.
But we don't do
It
it.
doesn't mean we can just go in there whenever we want. It does not mean that. It just means that we as a city, and every city does and should have some regulation to ensure that rental units are healthy and safe. Well, how's that a bad thing?
I don't know if that's our job or should that be done
It
with
is
the
our
county
job. We
over
have a
there?
code enforcement officer that does it.
Well, but I mean, should we be doing that or should that be done with the health department?
The health department doesn't do that. We already have the law since the
1998. It's 155.35.
It's not even a new law.
It's been in place since 1998.
When's the
I
last
don't
time,
know
when's the
why
last
it's
time we've done
backed
that?
out of shape here.
When's the last time
way
we
it is
physically
now.
done that?
So
No.
Tony, you could propose a law, a council, that we're no longer going to inspect apartments for health and safety. I don't think that's a good idea, but you can do that. But it's already a law, it's not part of this new code, so that's no reason to vote to rescind the code that everyone voted on, because it's not even new.
Everybody voted on a code we didn't even read.
That's
You in
not true,
person or on
Tony.
Facebook.
Some of us did.
You gotta say it's not.
You read that whole book?
For the most part,
Tim?
yes. Here, this drives me crazy. Here's what you gotta understand. and I hope this makes sense. If you're in a position to approve a newly written set of encyclopedias, would you be in a position to verify every fact in that whole volume of encyclopedias? No. That's why you gotta look at this document. You're voting for it, to approve it, to move it. That doesn't mean that 30 days from now, you're gonna find something That doesn't make sense. People are all pissed off about this. Well, you got the option to go back and change it.
So why don't we do that at the beginning?
What do you want to change? Then tell us
I don't
what you
know.
wanna change.
I-
That's what,
We want to have the discussion.
you don't understand the whole point, Dale. We want to go through it page by page and change it as we go through it.
Tony, tell us specifically what you want changed.
I don't know, Dale. I want to go through it with the guys who wrote it, and I want to go through it page by page.
Personally, Tony, you want to go through every, 260 pages and change what the experts wrote to whatever you want.
That's my job. Not what I want. No, not what I want, what the people want.
Well, how do you know what the people, you want to vote on it?
Because
You want
the
it to
people
do it?
talk to me,
It
Dale.
doesn't make sense at all. What Tim said is exactly right. If we
And they elected me to
to do
act
your
for
job,
them.
To do your job, and your job is.
That's right.
Your job's to hire an expert to do something that's good for the city and trust them to do that. If we hire an engineer.
Those experts don't live in Lawrenceburg.
If we hire an engineer to build a machine that the city needs, and we do all the work, we hire the best engineer we can, we tell them what kind of machine we want, we research them, we know they build the machine better than anybody, and they build it, why would we then go back and say, you know what, that gear, I don't like it, make it a little bigger?
'Cause they don't
And
live in
Blake
Lawrenceburg.
thinks this wire, I want it to be a little bigger, but what, that's not our job, our job is to do the other thing.
I thought
disagree.
we had previously decided to go through the entire thing individually, make notes, prepare questions, and bring it to this meeting that's scheduled on the 15th.
That's
Wasn't that
right.
what we'd all agreed on?
That's
correct.
right. That's exactly right.
So I don't understand why we have to go back and rescind the motion if we just, the last meeting, we decided to go through it, make your questions, highlight them however you care to do it, and bring them to the next meeting on the 15th.
Very true. It doesn't make any
But
sense to do.
no, what makes sense is if we don't go through it, I can read that and miss things. You can read that and miss things. He can read that and miss things. If we go through it together with the people who wrote it, we're more likely to get it right the first time. And we don't have to go back and do nothing.
But we keep.
And right now, you're just gonna come to that meeting with a couple questions and that's it.
Because Tony, we keep asking you what you want to change and you won't tell us. What are we-
And you won't listen to me. I want to go through it with the people who wrote it, Dale. There may be some things I want to change, and there may be some things I don't want to change.
Haven't you already read it?
I've gone through it, Dale. Yeah, it's 260 pages, and like he said, it's hard to understand.
288.
288. It's hard to understand. So I want the people here that wrote it to tell me about it. I got questions for them.
Why don't we set up a private meeting for him and them?
Yeah. Well, you can make your motion. I mean, is that a motion?
I said I wanted to make the motion.
Okay. There's a motion on the floor.
But now, by putting that,
Hold on,
Tony, by
wait.
putting that motion out there, it's just gonna bring, but like they said, for the 15th, when we talk with them, it doesn't matter if we've said okay, but we're still gonna come in here and ask, these questions are gonna be asked then.
If we
It's not gonna
rescind-
pass to anybody else
It-
until we decide then with the
If we
council.
rescind that motion, then we're not going to have that meeting on the 15th. We're going
Well,
to
we
have
already
them
was.
come in here and go through that book with us.
I thought that's all, everybody was gonna be involved, BZA, us, and the council.
Exactly.
So,
But-
if that's the case,
But we're not going to go through the book. We're just going to go there and say, do you have a question? Do you have a question? Okay, now vote on it, pass it.
Same thing as going through it.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
Joe.
it is.
We can go through it the way you want, Tony. We can do whatever you want. But I mean, it hasn't been passed yet. It's been passed by a planning commission. It's still before council. Council hasn't passed it yet.
Right.
So I mean, it's not passed yet. And look,
Yeah.
if you don't want to pass, if city council doesn't want to pass it at all, then that's fine.
I mean, I've
You don't
got
have
people
to.
in my
No one's-
area
no
complaining
one's
too,
making
but
you do anything.
when we have the 15th, I'm thinking we'll know more then. And if we don't get it ratified then, we'll just keep going till we do. Till we get the questions asked that we
No.
want to ask.
At that meeting, they'll have what questions you have. Everybody will have a question or two, and then that'll be it. Then they're going to vote on it and pass it or not pass it, probably pass it. And then we're going to look back and say, darn, I wished I had asked this, or darn, I wished I would have asked that, because we didn't go through the whole thing.
But we keep having meetings.
We don't keep having meetings. We've had one meeting, so we
We've
don't.
not had one meeting. We've had more than one meeting. And you've had multiple opportunities to ask questions or say what you want to change, and you just won't.
I've had one meeting on this, Dale, one.
That one meeting on the UDA.
Yes, I had one. I was at my brother's funeral in Missouri for the first one when this was passed,
That wasn't the first one. That wasn't the first one.
when the planning commission passed it.
We had a meeting around Christmas time with everyone, BZA, Planning Commission, we had the people that wrote it in here, we had a whole day where they were explaining things, we went over all the rules of planning and zoning in general, because there was some confusion about do zoning variances go before Planning Commission, we had to say, no, they don't, you know, I know people used to think that, remember that, we were all here, everyone was here.
Yeah.
But that's still an argument point right there.
And this is a multiple-year project, I just don't want you to mislead the public and say that we just had 2 meetings.
I am not misleading no public.
But to say we just had 2.
I'm misleading the public simply because I want to go through the book, Dale. So that's not misleading the public.
No, misleading, I'm saying you're misleading the public if you suggest that we just had 2 meetings on this. This is a multiple years.
I said that I've been to.
Well, that's not
Let me
your
ask you.
fault.
If we went through the book as you're
It's not my
proposing,
fault my brother passed away.
page by
That's
page.
not right.
I'm not saying that, Tony, don't do
If-
that, that's not.
Well, that's not right for you to say that to me, Dale.
That wasn't the only meeting, Tony.
If we go through the book, page by page, like you're suggesting we do, and 30 days down the road, somebody gets in your face and say, you asshole, why'd you approve this? And what are you gonna do? You're gonna go back and revisit what the person has on their mind and say, well, that's probably, he's got a valid point.
If he's got a valid
Maybe we ought
point.
to change that.
If he's got a valid point, but if he's got a valid point, maybe we should catch that when we go through it. And then he won't be. Right now, you're gonna have more of that happening because you have not gone through it.
Because somebody threw a bunch of crap out there about people going in
That ain't got nothing
people's houses.
that ain't got nothing to do with it.
Yes, it does.
No, it does
Yes,
not.
it does.
Well, and
Yes, it does. That's the only 2 things that we've heard about since we passed that, is going into people's houses and the color of the
Now,
houses.
I know,
No
Tom.
one, wait a minute, I got the floor. And no one listened to the fact that what they're saying is they're wanting us to look at not cookie cutting new subdivisions. They want to change the colors of the houses so they all don't look the same. Go up at the apartments up on the hill, Riviera. Most of them all look the same. I see what they're saying. Prime example, what they're asking, go out to Casey Kaniga's development out on Route 1. The houses are different colors, and I get what they're getting at. Doesn't look cookie cutter. They're not all the same. That's what they said in there. They didn't say Joe's got to paint his house because Bob's is blue and his is blue, now they want his white. That's not what they're saying. But that's what the public understood from the Facebook page. It's like, now you can tell me what color I'm gonna paint my houses. No one read into it. They're suggesting that new development come in and have different color homes. Am I right? Am I right?
yeah,
Okay, that's all I'm saying.
we can just take that out altogether.
I mean, that's fine with me, but I get their point.
Yeah, but it's not.
Riviera, go up at every building at Riviera all looks the same. Every one of them.
And it's what they do in a lot of cities, because these guys write these codes for a lot of cities. And what I will say in Mr. Abbott's defense is, because Mr. Abbott is a great councilman, he loves his community.
We know that.
He lives and breathes Lawrenceburg. And to say, hey, to any councilman, pass 50 new laws all at once that someone else wrote, does make you uncomfortable, for sure. I mean, I see that 100%. But why do you think we haven't changed this since 1996? Because it is hard to do. And when you don't change it, you don't update it, then you're actually hurting your community. But I understand your pains that you have with this, Tony. You're not wrong for being uncomfortable with something like this.
Well, I'm uncomfortable.
There's no other way to do it, you know?
I'm uncomfortable with more than what the 2 points are there, and we've spoke about a couple other ones there, Tommy, before, that I'm uncomfortable with, which I'm not going into now. I'll go into it when we go through it.
Or what they were.
Well, in whatever meetings.
So it's not just 2 points I'm uncomfortable
Okay,
with.
well, that's what, it seemed like everybody got riled up on them 2 points.
Well,
when
they
got
get
put on
riled up.
Facebook.
But whatever.
And that's the truth.
Whatever meetings you need, Tony, we'll do. And it's not, what you're saying is not unfair. I just want to make it clear that this is good, it's important, but it is hard to pass a big chunk of law at once. I understand that, but there's no other way to do it. You see what I mean? I mean, this has been something we've been working on for years. But the experts have been working on it. I haven't been doing it. John hasn't been writing it. Mario didn't write it. The experts who write it for a bunch of cities wrote it. That's why, like Tim said, you hire people that are experts in it, they write it, they present it to you, you think, okay, this is good, they tell you why it's good, and then you pass it. It would be impossible to go through and say, well, change this, change that. You know, everyone has a different opinion, you never do it.
Like I said too, they don't live in Lawrenceburg, those experts.
But they-
So there's some things that Lawrenceburg people don't want that they see as normal in another city.
And that's where we're gonna have to do our due diligence and find them and bring them to everybody's attention. Is what they're saying.
That's fair. We should do that, sure.
Yep,
On the 15th.
yep.
15th, yeah. And then on the 16th, if we got it, and 17th, if we got it.
One chapter at a time.
Yeah, it's, look.
We won't, if we do it one chapter at a time and don't just go in there and say, do you have a question, you have a question, let's vote on it.
I know I'm gonna be 2 or 3 ahead, that's all I'm gonna say.
I would agree with him on that. It'd be nice to go chapter at a time. There's some things that's at the beginning that we have this had nothing to do with us. With some of the things that John and Mario and you guys has got. We don't know that. We don't need to know that. We just talk about the things that's for the city, for the people. I've had people in my area jumping me over this, and I think a lot of it is the wording. The way that it's worded, it's like the housing and stuff. That's the way I took it. Like if you bought a house, or if you bought property down here, that you build a house, you can't, but if you got a white one over here, white one over there, you can't build a white one.
Can I ask a question? You guys keep referring to Joe Public, complaining to you about other things within the studio. The studio's never been publicized in my life.
It's been,
You know what?
it got put out there in Facebook.
Was
The whole unit, the whole thing?
It's published
There's
on
a
the
lot of
website.
things that was.
It was published.
On the website, I got you. I didn't even think that.
Yes.
All right, got you.
And people are in
Thank you.
uproar.
But could we agree that this would be fair? If someone comes to you, Mr. Fryman, and says, I read the UDO, I got online, I read this part, I don't like it. Could you say, okay, yes, sir, and just write down what they don't like about it? Say, sir, I'm gonna look into that, I'm your councilman, and then tell us, because if you just keep saying they're in an uproar, that doesn't help.
Yeah.
If you say specifically,
Specific. Gotcha.
then we can work on it. But if you just
Makes
keep
sense.
saying people are mad, people are on Facebook, first of all, quit being on Facebook. That's like 2% of the community getting mad about things.
The
Just
thing is-
focus on doing your job, because you do a great job. I mean, here's what I'll say. We just had 2 new businesses presented to us and a whole bunch of new houses. And I can tell you guys that John, there are 100 times more people interested in putting businesses and houses in Lawrenceburg than you'll ever even see. We're always being considered for new businesses. All these lots are getting filled because of the work you guys do. I mean, that's not something that happened 10 years ago. And
Right.
so this is all working. You guys are doing the right thing. It's just sometimes it is hard and it's stressful. But that's why you guys are good at your job, because you put up with that stress.
It was just put out there and it shouldn't have been put out there till we had an opportunity to go through it ourselves.
No, it should have, because we have to publish it. We have to publish it.
I didn't think of that. That was
Yeah, but I mean, it's just,
But it's not final. It hasn't been.
yeah,
Right.
that's one thing that I'm telling them, but I said, man, I mean, they've been wearing me out in my area.
Write it down.
So,
Come see.
You knew what you signed up
well,
for.
you know what
big
they
boy.
are. You know
Knew
what they
you
are.
signed up for. big
I'd like
boy.
to add one thing
Oh,
to
I'm-
that. I've spent the past few weeks meeting with each board member that would like to come in the office. I do have a list of specific questions for the consultant to discuss with the board on the 15th.
Yeah, John and
And
Mario agree.
I'd be happy to help you go through new versus old. If you got time to sit in the office, I'll be happy to meet with you.
Well, that's what we was talking about, apples and oranges, so we know,
Yep.
you know. But I just think some of it
But if you've got a
is
specific,
wording. And then when you start going through here and checking, some of it makes a little bit of sense, but the public doesn't know that. Yeah, so, but,
if you've got specific code sections, I can let you know where they came from or if they're new.
yeah.
We can reference the old files.
So if we don't do this, I better see a whole bunch of questions from a few people. Mr. Denning, Jim, have about 50 of them ready.
See, here's what I'm concerned that we're gonna get into. I'll use the term setback. Everybody in this room know what the word setback means in there. I don't. So am I gonna bring a question and say, what's a setback? Will somebody define a setback for me? And you can go through page by page of that book and find acronyms and verbiage that you're not familiar with. There's no reason to educate Tim Denning on what a setback is. It's not a requirement.
Well, that's part of what we're talking about. There's a lot of things that we won't know, that we don't know goes on in this city. And a lot of it, that's the reason we count on John and Dale and everybody else to do. And they do a great job at it. But then there's certain things that gets out here, and then the public starts with us, so this is where this is coming from. You understand that, don't you, Mr. Weldon?
It's not,
And
not
this,
the big-
it's
not
that.
the big mystery that people think it is.
Yeah.
It's all, everyone does the best they can, everything's real transparent, everyone loves Lawrenceburg and is trying to do what's best for the city. It's not a big conspiracy. That's the Facebook angle. The reality is, it's just a bunch of people doing the best they can to make the city better every day. It's pretty simple. We keep things simple here. We really do.
Well put. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
I'll make that motion.
I'll take it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion adjourned.
See you later.
And then he make the, I thought I made a motion, but I just got shot.
Hey, just say that, y'all.
I did make a motion.
Motion to what?
But then they went in to have their 15th.
Oh.
Tony. They've been in saying,
They better have 100
To me.
Oh.
We'll have PCA this month. Okay. And the first one's still the.
yeah, you do. You used to be damn good at it. Who are you?
Yeah.
Better go taekwondo, maybe.
She's